All right, good morning. Happy Saturday, everyone. My name's Michelle. I am your certified professional coach and mindful meditation teacher. And we're diving right in today because we're getting down to the nitty gritty. And as I like to tell people when I get to this topic, let's put on our big girl and big boy britches because compassion can be a real barrier for some people. And I'm here to tell you that it takes real courage, real strength to train ourselves to exercise compassion for ourselves and for others. So I'm going to jump right in this morning with a story, actually. And this is a true story about the world's largest solid gold Buddha. So back in the 1930s in Bangkok, Thailand, there was a Buddha statue that was sitting at a very popular temple for quite some time. And then when people stopped visiting the temple, they decided to move the statue someplace else in Bangkok. So they moved it to another temple where it sat outside, just barely protected under a tin roof for years and years, so subject to the weather and the elements. And then eventually in the 1950s, they decided to move it someplace else in Bangkok. And the statue was 9 feet tall, 5.5 tons. And so they hooked up ropes to try and move it. Well, when they moved it, the ropes broke, the statue fell, and it cracked. And the movers started investigating the cracks and could see inside something shining back. So they ended up going down a little bit deeper, peeling away some of the layers of the clay and mud that had been encasing this statue. And that's when they found out that underneath was this solid gold statue, along with instructions and a key for how to disassemble and assemble it. So what what expert historians believe happened is that this statue was actually constructed in the 13th or 14th centuries in this tiny village in Thailand. And it had been encased in these layers of mud or concrete to hide the fact that it was solid gold underneath, to protect it from Burmese invaders that were going to come in. And it worked because the tiny village was actually decimated, but the statue was left untouched. And so now this gold, gigantic Buddha statue sits at a temple in Bangkok, Thailand. And as I said, it's the world's largest. So what's the moral of this story, actually? Well, as humans, over the course of our life, we constantly layer on mud, these layers, these filters, covering up our true golden nature underneath. Our true gold really does lie within. And what mindfulness and coaching help us do is start to peel back those layers of mud so that we can get to what our true nature is. Science actually shows us that compassion is our true nature. I want to give you just a real quick rundown here, some basics. I'm not a scientist, but this is what I've learned. We have this reptilian brain that we're wired for this fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. And this was back in the day of caveman. This was designed to allow us to get adrenaline pumping to our system, to our limbs very quickly when we needed to outrun saber-toothed tigers. It was intended to have a short-term impact and effect. We also have a mammalian or caregiver brain, and that part of our brain releases feel-good chemicals like oxytocin and endorphins. And what happens in today's society with all of the stress and demands that we are under is our reptilian brain, which is our sympathetic nervous system, is constantly activated. We are constantly seeing saber-toothed tigers everywhere we look. And we don't give our mammalian brain, the parasympathetic nervous system, time to come in to down-regulate that nervous system to allow us to heal and restore. And what science is actually showing about our self-judgment, our self-criticism, is that we are activating that reptilian brain, that sympathetic nervous system. So when we attack ourselves, when we judge ourselves and criticize ourselves, we are actually the attacker and the victim. And we're keeping ourselves in that elevated fight, flight, or freeze mode, which is only supposed to be activated for short periods of time. And we're keeping ourselves there for long periods of time, creating stress, anxiety, all of the conditions that we're suffering with today. And what we see when we exercise self compassion, though, is that self compassion actually activates that mammalian, that parasympathetic system, so that we can start to heal and restore and release those beautiful chemicals like oxytocin and endorphins. Despite this science, though, a lot of people, and it's understandable, have a lot of or that just sounds weak when we talk about self compassion. We're conditioned to think that self judgment and self criticism is the way to go, that that's how we're going to get the things that we want. Be hard on myself, drive myself, push. Don't be weak. Don't be complacent. Don't let myself rest for just a minute. And what science actually shows, and this has been shown by the work of Dr. Kristen Neff, who's an expert in self compassion. She's looked at over 1,200 studies since 2003 that actually show that self compassion makes people stronger, more resilient, better able to cope. People spend less time self ruminating, less time in self pity. They're more present for their lives and for people around them. So, what the science actually shows is that all those barriers we have to self compassion, we can just knock those over because they're not true. So, why does self compassion matter? Because going back to that thing that I mentioned at the very beginning, that feeling, that thing that you want, ask yourself, why aren't I going after it? What is it that I'm believing about myself that's holding me back? And how could extending myself some compassion, and we'll talk about how to do that in the next few videos. How could extending myself some compassion help me start to break down my own barriers? Help me start to peel back those layers of mud to reveal my true nature, my golden self that is very much capable of achieving that thing that I want. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoy your Saturday, and tomorrow just keeps getting better, so please tune in. Thanks so much.